So he never returns his horse, says, am I mistaken? I keep hearing modern Muslim apologists making declarations about how Islam raises the status of women. It doesn't seem to add up. Doesn't seem to add up indeed. What are your thoughts, Hadja, on the status of women in Islam? Do you think that Muhammad elevated the status of women?
Degraded it from the beginning. Like there's no, in Islam, women does not matter. Women doesn't matter. So these Muslim scholars and their teachings, they only teaching you the surface. They're not teaching you the truth about Islam. That's why you will find out after you convert to Islam these things.
And then it's too late, because then you're subject to the penalties for apostasy, which in a Muslim country means death, and Western just ostracization and social harassment and whatnot. Just that minor thing.
So I also have conclusive proof, if you pull up what I have, that in fact Islam degraded women over what the norm was in Medina when they came. So this is Umar whining to Muhammad. We, the people of Quraysh, used to have the upper hand over our wives. By that they mean that they would not even venture an opinion in context. Whenever you find out what he's whining about, he was complaining about something being wrong, and his wife gave him her opinion, and he was offended by her venturing an opinion when he was just essentially using her as if he's talking to a dog and expecting no answer, right? We used to have the upper hand of our wives, but when we came to the Ansar, we found that their women had the upper hand over the men. So our women also started learning the ways of the Ansari women. I shouted at my wife, and she retorted against me, and I disliked that she should answer me back. So this is around the time that that this entire story, it's a really long hadith, talks about how Muhammad once again approved of beating wives because he had briefly forbidden it, and then after that the only thing he forbade was hitting your wife in the face. So you're not allowed to punch her in the face anymore, but go ahead and beat her. So the people of Medina, the Ansar, the women had a much, much higher status than the Quraysh did, or the Muslim women who were in Mecca. The Muslim women in Mecca were much degraded compared to the women in Medina, period. And this was returned to its rightful and normal place, according to Umar, of course, and so this is a story of like how badly women in the Muslim community were treated then, and then continued to be treated because Muhammad soon said, go ahead and slap them, and laughed whenever Umar told a story about beating his wife, and when Umar and Abu Bakr both hit their daughters in front of him. So this is, by the way, after the time of the Justinian Code, and I believe it is in and I can't remember the book right now, but in the Justinian Code, one of the reasons that a woman could divorce her husband in Christian Byzantine Empire was because he hit her. Also, verbal abuse was grounds for divorce, because no woman should be beaten by her wife or should be verbally abused and degraded. And it explicitly says that those are grounds for divorce in the Justinian Code. So why on earth do we need Muhammad to tell us how to treat women when the Justinian Code already says you can't hit your wives and you can't verbally abuse them, when Muhammad endorsed both?
Yeah, good question. And
Sorry.
I have
just go ahead. Sorry, my bad.
I'll be brief. I have a suggestion why women are allowed to be hit anywhere other than the face, and that's probably because you're not going to see any of their other body parts. So again, the idea of the public shame is the problem. That you'd see in public that they've been beat, and someone might think badly of you because they might have human decency and think that a woman shouldn't be beat. Well, as long as it's somewhere else where no one can see, it's all good. Go ahead.
Thank you. Well, I think that like a lot of things you guys have said is absolutely proving the point. I just want to extend and just probably add one more point. I mean, how would you know that whether the status of a certain gender is or a certain race or certain color is whether uplifted or it has been degraded? Is how their representation in society in certain sectors. When you look at pre-Islamic era, and when you look at the Arabia, how many women entrepreneurs they had? Look at Khadija, right? She was one of the prominent businesswomen who actually employed Muhammad, right? So talk about there were a few so-called female prophets were there. I mean, let's consider they were not prophets. Let's consider them as a guru or a teacher or somebody as a professor, right? Somebody is trying to profess or somebody is trying to preach their ideology or preach their knowledge, right? So there were a lot of representation of women in that culture. What happened? Like, give me any reference in Islam where after Islam, what's the status of, what's the contribution of a woman in a society at different levels? Zero. So how they have been upgraded? That I hope that answers his question as well.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I'm not seeing any upgrade.